Today's interview is with Jackie Wheeler-Wiebe, and we talk about her name. It's kind of funny. I guess a lot of people misspell it and mispronounce it, but I got it right the first time. So she is fantastic, and she has the cutest dimples. I loved talking to her. She was just, you know how somebody just exudes positive energy? And I'm sure you'll get that from the interview once you hear it. But she is the founder of Homeschool Think Tank. And she strives to connect homeschool families with one another and provides the resources and inspiration they need. So she also has a podcast. So she's a fellow podcaster. It's called the Homeschool Think Tank Parenting Podcast. And I know a lot of my followers and listeners are grandmothers. So maybe you're not somebody who is raising children at the moment, but you might have grandchildren that would definitely love to listen to Jackie and want to hear more about homeschooling. We do probably have a lot of homeschoolers these days after the COVID experience. Many people are probably still homeschooling in some places. But Jackie is so interesting. Her backstory, I love people's backstories of how they get to where they are, where they came from, how they got their ideas, what was the first moment. She actually remembers the first moment where there was a big shift. And often I think our path, it starts because we're wanting to help somebody else, or something happens to us and we're like, oh gosh, I want other people to feel the same way as me. And so there's this point at which we realize that we can help, that we can impact somebody else, if it's one person or if it's more than one person. And for her, it was her daughter. And you'll hear about the story and how it evolved. But she also became an author. And then she had a horrible experience writing her book. So I'm not going to give that away. And it's like a nightmare. Like if you ever sat down to write a book and put your heart and soul into it, you would never want this to happen to you. So I won't blow it, but I hope you enjoy listening to Jackie's story. I enjoyed every minute of our conversation. She is definitely somebody I'd hang out with because, like I said, her energy is contagious, and she's just somebody that shines her light in the world doing what she does. And she's passionate about it, and the ripple effect at least spread to me during this interview. So I hope you enjoy it. Hi, I'm Laurie Wright, also known as Not Your Average Grandma. I created this podcast as a place to go for midlife inspiration. If you are in a stage where you believe the best is behind you, it is my hope that one of these episodes will ignite a long suppressed or unrealized desire, and you will see the potential within yourself just waiting to be tapped, so you can do amazing things with the time you have left. I want you to stop seeing your age as a limitation and start seeing it as your superpower. You have years of experience and value that the younger you never had. So it's time to lean into that and use it to fuel your future. No more letting age hold you back from the pursuit of a more passion-filled life. The more passionate we are, the better the world will be. So stop settling for average, put your AirPods in, and let this episode inspire you to take the first step in transforming your mind, body, and soul. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And today I have with me Jackie Wheeler-Wiebe. And Jackie, we just had a long conversation about our names, and she does not actually use Wiebe. When she started out, she didn't, and she's using it more. And I thought it was really funny because she says people misspell it all the time. So this might be a lesson for people of how you do it is Wiebe. And you're supposed to, the lesson I always learned in elementary school was I before E except after C. So we'll just make sure they have that little note. So going forward, they'll always spell it right, Jackie. So welcome to Not Your Average Lives.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I am so glad to be here, and I love your podcast. I have actually gained a lot from some of your episodes. So,
thanks.
So yes, I've really enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah. So Jackie
she
has an interesting business. And so we met in a podcasting group, and she doesn't even know my story about my youngest daughter, and she is a homeschooling mom who turned her knowledge of homeschooling into a business. And so I love that. And, she's really passionate about podcasting, which I am too. I just think, it's such a chatty vehicle. I love to chat with people. And writing a blog I feel like that's great for people who love to write. And I do love to write, but sometimes it's tedious to write.
It is. I have a blog as well.
Yeah.
So
it's tedious to write.
And a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I want to hear your backstory, because you had told me that I think your daughter was struggling. And
well, I'll show you a little bit here.
Yeah.
So my business to start with is Homeschool Think Tank.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a website and a podcast and all of these things, but I didn't start a business in a traditional sense. I started it to help my daughter learn how to publish a book. So she started writing novels when she was around 11, 12, somewhere in there. Her younger sister, I've always homeschooled my kids the whole way through. My youngest daughter went to private school for about 1.5 years. We were having some challenges. And so we had to break some negative patterns that had developed through that. And in that time, my oldest daughter really became a heavy reader. She was always a reader. But what she also did to fill that time was she started writing every single day. She was working.
My daughter too. That's crazy. My youngest daughter would go in the furnace room on this old desktop computer, and she would compose these stories. And she just spent so much of her time. She still hasn't written a book. I find it fascinating that she, at a very young age, started to write one. I love that you encouraged her, and then that you sought to develop yourself and knowledge in that area to further support her. That's great. So amazing.
Exactly. And I remember reading at one point, and this is probably before I even had kids, there are best-selling books, but what it doesn't say is that it's the best writing author. It's a best-selling. So you have to learn you can write an amazing book, but if you don't learn how to sell it, nobody will ever read it. So I knew there was a lot more to writing a book. I ended up writing this book. It's called Think Homeschool, Live and Learn Your Way. And I ended up writing it to help people decide if homeschooling is the right choice for them. And I did this well before the COVID pandemic.
Yeah. So when you say not traditional, what you're saying is your daughter had a need, you signed up to learn how to self-publish, and then you had an idea for yourself, and then you started writing a book, and then you were like, oh, I have all this knowledge about homeschooling. That's what my book can be about. So it started to light a little fire inside of you.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So yes, literally the first day I sat down to write this book, it wasn't, I'm going to write about homeschooling. I literally was brainstorming, what do I know a lot about? And my goal, I'm almost embarrassed to say it now, but it's true. My goal wasn't necessarily to serve homeschool families. It was just to learn how to write a book so I could help my daughter publish when she was ready. But as a result of writing this book, what happened is I started thinking about all of the challenges I've had as a homeschooling mother over the years, and I've had a lot of them. And I also started coming up with ideas on how to solve those problems. And my daughter still hasn't published. That's another story. I hope someday that she will. But what happened there is she started college, and it got in the way of her writing.
And so this is probably because
you
were telling me, if you don't mind me saying your age. So you're
go ahead.
46.
I am 46. I have to think about it.
So this was your like early 40s when you were going through this kind of
this
realization.
Change. Yeah, because your podcast is all about not your average lives and that midlife transformation. I literally can almost pinpoint I can pinpoint the moment in time where I had this switch that I had to do something different. So it was the fall of 2017. I was feeling really frustrated, and I've always been a pretty happy-go-lucky person, but I wasn't in that time frame. I was feeling really frustrated. I was really stressed out. We had made some really big life changes that were more than I thought they would be. And I'll tell you briefly. We moved to get horses. My kids worked on other people's ranches for a year and a half. I've never wanted a horse a day in my life, but to support my kids, we eventually made that move, and it was really stressful. And it costs way more than I ever thought it would. I was just like spinning out in my head, like, holy cow, I budgeted a lot for this, but this is even more than I thought.
Horse. So I had a horse. I can relate to your kids at 12. I was like, that's all I wanted was a horse and, to ride.
Yes. Well, and my oldest daughter wants to go to the Olympics someday.
Oh, wow.
She wanted to do the youth Olympics, but that's a thing. That is a thing. And it's too late to do that. Jumping. Yeah.
Wow.
And I've had one of the best horsemen in the world say, I could make a star out of that girl. Like she has potential, but that's a thing. And especially for parents who didn't have horses growing up.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll get back on track here, but that's where it started. So I didn't just think, oh, I'm going to start a business. It started with me brainstorming about what I would write about, and then realizing I had something to offer to other people. But I've had to step into that. It has not been easy for me at all. And something we discussed talking about today is technology hurdles. Let me tell you where I'm coming from technology wise. When I started this business, I did not know how to add an attachment to an email. That's how poor my technology was. I literally opened my computer once a week to pay the bills, do an occasional Google search. That was it.
Well, you knew how to Google search. That is like, that's all you need.
Yeah, I know. But you know what? I didn't use it that much.
Yeah.
I literally would get frustrated. I didn't realize this is embarrassing. I didn't realize my mouse had batteries. It would die. And I'd be like, what's wrong with this thing? My husband had always just done it because we shared the computer. For the most part, at some point I had my own, but
that reminds me
just changed it.
That reminds me of a funny story. So I worked at AOL for a long time, and the customer service people would get, because we initially, before we had broadband, you got a DVD or CD, and you had to put it into and you had a little drive that comes out. Some cars still have them. Well, people thought that was a cup holder. So they were using that for a cup holder. They didn't know it was to put their DVD.
Oh my gosh. I remember. Yes, I do remember that. So this is where my technology was when I started this.
I was the same. I knew how to attach a file, but I did not. I remember because I started as a Beachbody coach back in the day, and I had to run Facebook groups because we had this online fitness and for accountability. And I didn't know how to create a Facebook group. I didn't even know I didn't know so much about posting on Facebook. I just didn't know. I went to my kids, and that's what they're for, right? They're for teaching technology.
Yes. And my daughter's helped me a bit. You could say that with the social media, but
so how'd you get past that? Facebook. Like, how'd you get past? What did you tell yourself?
I just started. And so initially I had no idea that technology would be an issue for me. So I started with writing a book. I just opened up, I think it was like Notepad. I didn't even have, Microsoft Office, and just started writing this book. And I bought a little course on how to write a book. It sort of broke it down for me. I was like, oh, I can do this. And it was funny. It was called How to Write a Book in 24 Hours. How about How to Write a Book in a Year? But I got it done. But here's what happened with that. This was my first big aha moment of I need to step it up in technology. I worked on this book. Initially, I worked on it one day a week. My kids went to a shared school program. They're homeschooled kids, but through a public school, they have a one day a week where it's for homeschooled kids and they would do electives. So I would take them to that every Wednesday. And that was about an hour from my house. So I would go to that library, the local library there, open my computer, work on it every Wednesday. And over time, I did a little more, but here's what happened. One day, I would think I opened my computer at the library because I think I would have just lost my cookies if I was at home, but I was forced to keep my cool. So the night before, I literally finished this book. I was like, I'm done. And I remember leaning back in my chair, like, I finished it. I'm done. The next morning at the library, I opened my computer up and the file has vanished. It's gone. Like the file is there, but when I go to open it, there's nothing. There's nothing there. And I was in a state of disbelief. I had not backed my book up anywhere. It never even occurred to me because, like I said, before this, I opened my computer for bills. That was it. I hadn't saved anything of value in years. I hadn't been a student. I did go to college and I probably backed things up back then. I know I did on different floppy disks, but
I remember when you told me this story in the group, and I was like, when I heard it, I thought it was just part of your book. I did not realize all of it was your entire book. I mean, I think we have all lost like a school paper, but that's like what, a couple of days worth of work. I can't even imagine how, so tell me what goes through your mind, because I believe that the universe sends us these lessons and some people take these signs as I'm not meant to do this.
Well, so this was it took me 5 months. It's a short book. It's not really long. It gets to the point. It really just helps you decide if homeschooling is the right decision for you. So my first thought was I went to a common area and I called my brother, who is an IT guy. But here's the deal. He didn't even know I was writing a book, Lori. I remember before this all started, like the December before, I had already decided I was going to write about homeschooling, but I decided to wait to do everything until January after the holidays. And then I started, like New Year's was over and I got started. I got to work. And I called my brother. I'm like, hey, Dave, so I'm writing this book and I finished it and I lost it. Can you help me? Because I was honestly I wasn't comfortable with this role yet of I'm an author. I'm starting a business. I mean, only a handful of people knew I had even started this business, which maybe I started a little early, but whatever. I had this vision of what I wanted. And so, yeah, he went through my computer that night for 4 or 5 hours. And his response was, and this is virtually, he lives in Utah and I am in New Mexico. And so he did this virtually and he said, Jackie, you could get it back if you want to pay somebody probably $5,000 or more to get it back. But I can't do that for you. I don't have what you need. And let me tell you, his skills are high. He has run county detention centers, entire cities, IT programs, like the 811 stakes of certain states. Different things. He has skills.
Yeah. It just so happens I was watching a Forensic Files last night program, and it was about this guy who killed somebody, and they got and I guess it was an FBI person who like does that for a job. And he had deleted the plan. He had a plan to kill the person and it was all deleted. But and then when a file gets deleted, it apparently gets splintered into these different pieces, but you can find the pieces and put it back together. So I think your brother was right about how much it was cost, because they found 80% of his plan and they pieced it together, and they said it took 33 days to do that. So, but it's funny that you were telling me this story, and I saw this episode last night about things almost like when you delete them, they're never really gone. They're still there until I guess the computer reuses stuff as it needs. He
can perform some magic, but
that's crazy.
He couldn't perform that magic anyway. So
then you hear that. How long did he work on it, and then when did you get the news? A few days later.
Well, no, he did it all that evening for me and just went through it through my computer. And my computer wasn't as full of things as it is now, because I was just getting started with my business. But so here's what happened the next day.
Hey there. Sorry for the interruption, but I want to make sure you know that my amazing free training series called Ignite Your Second Half Soul, that I first introduced back in January, and that some told me was the best free training they'd ever experienced, is coming back. If you missed it or want to do it again, mark the release date of Sunday, May 16th on your calendar. In this training, I'll teach you the 4 keys you need to go from passionless to motivated, focused, and on fire about what's possible for you in this second half of your life. You are guaranteed multiple aha moments during this fun and interactive training experience designed especially for women over 50 who are looking for more purpose in their life now that their kids need them less. If you think that your kids were your purpose, think again. It's the perfect time to get reacquainted with who you are, what you love, and what you want to accomplish in the time you have left. So get signed up today and begin to open up your mind to all of the incredible possibilities that are likely not even ideas in your head yet. Go to igniteyoursecondhalfsoul.com, all spelled out, and follow the instructions to sign up so you don't miss it. Now, back to the episode.
So the following, it's funny, I even know the days. The following Thursday, right? So this happened Tuesday night, I finished the book. Wednesday, I realized I lost the book. Thursday, I woke up, I don't know, 5:36 a.m. And I remember just like these tears coming to my eyes I still cry. I did not expect to get teared up about this, but I cried, and
it's always better the second time.
I actually said something much worse.
Yeah.
So my first thought when I woke up that morning after I realized the book was gone was I was teared up, and it broke my heart. But I thought, I have to get up and go again. If I can't handle this, I shouldn't be in business, because I know I have this vision that outlives me, and I have much harder things in my future. I've got to overcome this. And I got up, and by 6 a.m., I was working on the book again. And I just started over. But here's what happened. The book is actually half as long as it was. I took out about half the book. And here's what I took out. I took out the reasons that maybe you might not want your kids in public school. And the reason I did that is people have their own reasons. And I am never out to bash that. I think people intuitively know why they might not. But here are the reasons you might want to homeschool. Here's what you're going toward if you make this choice. People can make up their own minds about why that's not for them. But what they need is, what are you going to gain by homeschooling your kids? Because if you're not familiar with that world, you don't know. So I say the book is half as long and twice as good.
Isn't that interesting? You know, I always think the redos are better. One of my guests, I had a guest on one time and I forgot to hit record. And I was so embarrassed, and I didn't even realize it till after we had gotten off the call. And then I had to reach out to her and say, would you mind redoing it? I was so afraid of her response and that she would be mad. And her response was, oh, I'm so glad. I didn't think it was very good. And the next time we recorded was so much better. So it's so funny. I'm so glad you had that takeaway, because I believe you're so right. I'm sure it's twice as better, probably 3 times as better.
Well, you have to be able to move forward. And so as far as starting a business, getting over the technology, this was my first step. So my brother taught me how to back it up to the cloud. And I have another obstacle. I tend to say that if I can start an online business, I believe anybody can, because one, I did not have the technology there, which there's a lot of tech to overcome. Number 2, I just forgot it. There's that 46 years old. Number 2, I have terrible internet where I live. Like, we barely have internet, as you can see, because once in a while there's little glitches in our audio. But you know what? I've dealt with it. And I forgot to do something for you today, Lori, and I'm sorry. Usually I put my internet on my cell phone and take it off the house phone, because my cell phone Wi-Fi is better. But these are things I've had to overcome. Like, I don't download a long video from home. I have to go to my mother's house because my internet won't support it. but you know what? It supports most things. We actually live out in the country, so I feel lucky to have Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you can overcome so many things, but I think you really have to have this mindset of, I'm going to do this. You've got to have a vision. You have to know what you want out of
but
what
you
you're
didn't
doing.
know that.
You don't have to know how to do it, but you have to know where you're going.
But you didn't know that in the beginning. You didn't know that.
I knew it was about homeschooling. That was my first part of knowing where I was going, is I was writing a book. My second part is about homeschooling. My third part was, I've had a lot of struggles that I haven't been proactive in overcoming. I think other people are having these problems too, and I can help them. That was the third part. Then the fourth part is, I have this vision that I want to live beyond my own life. And I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, as far as I'm concerned. But you just have to keep believing in yourself and your ability to figure things out. And so for overcoming tech, as far as something that can help your listeners, your listeners are oftentimes starting businesses. Am I correct in that?
Well, what my intention for my podcast and the listeners is that they're inspired by the stories they hear, whether it's to start a new business or whether it's just to break away from the mundane and settling for the life they don't want and start figuring out what the heck they do want.
Well, you know what? And that's exactly okay. So let's sort of switch that a little then. Here's how you break away from the mundane, in my opinion. And actually, this is podcast episode number 1 on the Homeschool Think Tank Parenting Podcast. You have 30 minutes about it, but I'll break it down here. Just like I did on that first day, write down what you're good at. Write down your strengths. Don't worry about what you're not good at. Just write down your strengths and really brainstorm. And then maybe ask other people around you, what do you think I'm good at? And then you get out there and you share it. I don't care if you just share it locally or if you share it online, you share it with one person or you share it with 1,000 people. But it has to be something that fills you with purpose and passion. And I am passionate about homeschooling. But you know what? Because I started sharing this passion about homeschooling, I've developed 2 other passions. I never knew I was meant for business, but I was born to run a business. I love running businesses. I love talking about businesses. Now I also know, because of that, I love podcasting. And in the future, and I'm thinking in the next year, I will start something where I'm sharing about building businesses and podcasting. I don't know what that's going to look like today, but I know I'm going there. I know I'm going to go there, and I'm going to help other people do those things too. So
it's an adventure.
Honestly, starting a podcast is a great way. Just talk about whatever you want. You could start a podcast with your own name. If you don't really know what you want to do, just start talking and you'll figure it out. Or start a website, start writing, you'll figure it out. Start a local book club around something you love, you know? But you got to share it. That's it. You got to share it.
Yeah. You could do a podcasting book club or something. Yeah. I know somebody, and she's on her 3rd podcast. She's rebranded like 3 times as she's evolved, because it's all a process. It's all an evolution, right? So one of the things that struck me is I agree with you that I think it's a great idea to ask other people what you're good at, because I think a lot of women at midlife start to get into the mindset of I'm a generalist, but I'm not an expert. Everybody thinks we need, like, we look at other people and we compare ourselves to other people and we think, oh, she knows that so deep. And, and that's one thing I thought I'm surface level on a lot of things, but I'm not really deep on a lot of things. And so, that was kind of my limiting belief. So I think asking other people is really good, but I think you can be really good at something, but it might not light you up. And that's where you get into, like, I think I went into a career based on what I wanted to make money, which is the wrong reason to really get into a career, because it wasn't heart-based, it was brain-based. And so the other thing, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, is you clearly, when you were pursuing, when you found that thing that you were good at, it also gave you a deep sense of joy. It gave
yeah.
you, there was a connection there to like some inner calling. And so
Yes.
how do you explain that? How do you, because to me, it's a feeling. It's like, yeah, you can find out what you're good at, but when you look at it on paper and you're thinking about it, does your heart skip a beat?
Yeah.
That's important
Yes.
to tune into that inner feeling, right?
So I have 2 theme songs, and I literally listened to one every single day the first year that I started my business. And I didn't even know the song right away, and to give you an idea, I can listen to a song 100 times and never memorize the words. That is, my daughter can listen to it one time and know it, and my husband can too. I'm
unless it's from like the 70s, and I know word for word.
Oh, not even that. No, I am terrible with that. But I actually went out of my way to memorize the words for the song. It's Carrie Underwood's "The Champion." That song was like spoke to my heart. And then I love Alicia Keys, "This Girl Is on Fire."
Oh, that's good.
Totally different levels of music, but as far as tone, but that. Yes, it does. And I am just so passionate about sharing this because I see what homeschooling makes possible. And most people I think when most people think about homeschooling at first, they think, I don't want my kids in school. And here's what I say about that. You can know what you're going away from, but to succeed for the long haul, you have to have a purpose. You have to have a reason to homeschool your kids. Because you want to be, if going away from something is one thing, but you need to be going toward something. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. And then I realized that most of my pitfalls around homeschooling happened when I started putting the correct curriculum before the connection with my children. So I was always so worried in the back of my head, like, what if the state checks up on me or whatever? I want to be able to prove that I'm doing these things. Well, here's what happens. And you have in your head this is what they're doing in public school, so my kid should do exactly X, Y, and Z too. But you know what? Maybe one kid is way ahead of the game and one kid struggles to just be at the game. Mm-hmm. What happens then? And so you start putting that curriculum first and you mess things up. And I'm going to just cry.
Yes. You want me to tell you my story while you and you can get back to
together.
It? Yeah. And you can tell me, because I think this is exactly what you're getting at. So I have 2 daughters. They're 2 years apart in school. And the younger daughter was in gifted and talented. And she got to the point where she felt that she was the dumbest gifted and talented person. And they bused in the school system we were in Northern Virginia. They bused the kids to another school on certain days. So she was taken away she loved her class, and she was taken away and put with these kids that she was measuring herself against. And they would answer questions before she would answer them. And it just ruined her confidence. So when she said, "Mom, I don't want to be in gifted and talented anymore." So when she this was like 6th grade, I think. So when she went into middle school, we said, okay, no more gifted and talented. And but she was straight A student. When she got into high school, and she was very well adapted socially, and she was in sports. So there was no reason. It wasn't like she was a loner or she felt excluded. But she got into high school and she started to get C's, and she didn't care. That was the thing that bothered me. She did not care anything about her grades. And I said to her one day, because the teacher would call me and say she's not turning in her homework. And I said to her, "Why are you not turning in your homework?" And she said, "I know a C is average. A C is passing. She figured out the system that she doesn't have to turn in her homework." And so I had this vision of an adult that didn't go to work, got fired from every job. I was like, if this is the way she's going to operate in life, this is not good. And I saw her getting depressed, and you don't know with teenagers, you just, and I started going places that I was like, this could be really bad. If she continues to be depressed, then she could do something that is irreversible, start taking drugs or something to just numb what she's feeling. Right. So, and she kept saying, I want to be homeschooled. I want to be homeschooled. She knew about homeschooling because she followed a band and they were homeschooled. And so that, I think that was in her head. And she's also the one who wanted to write a book. So she's just a different, and what I learned is that she did not operate well in a 30-person classroom. She was afraid to raise her hand and ask questions. She didn't want to stand out. And she just was lost in the sea of other children. And so, and it's funny because at the time, homeschooling wasn't a thing. It was like frowned upon. And the way the school system worked is you couldn't participate in sports. If you left the public school system, you could not join any of the sports that the public school offered. I know that's changed now, I think. You also, if you left, she was a rising junior when we pulled her out. They said halfway through her junior year, if she wants to come back, she has to repeat her junior year. So they all these consequences of doing what's best for you or for your child, right? So we pulled her out anyways. I went to the yellow pages because both my husband and I worked full time. This is my ex-husband at the time. We both worked. We weren't going to quit our jobs and do it. So I was like, okay, where can I take her and put her in this environment? And I found a place and it changed her life. It was really like at the time she had her driver's license, it was like she started college her junior year because she went to an office building and she was one of 7 kids that was and she would come home and what I realized is learning is a lifelong thing. And my child is not learning. She's checked out. And what it did for us. And it was a roll of the dice. We didn't know. We just were I was desperate to help my child, honestly. And she went to this day thing and this totally different environment than public school. And she thrived. She came home and she was like, Dad, did you know that, the history lessons, the everything. And the teachers were so different in that school. They really cared about the individual. And then she went, it was funny because the graduation was at a Italian restaurant, it was they had a big room where you could do multi tables. And I think there was, can't even remember 25, 30 kids that she graduated with. And it was just a little simple ceremony. But what was also different and really special is they didn't have a speaker. They invited the parents to speak. So every parent was able to get up, give their child a diploma. I'm going to get emotional now. And I wrote a poem for her. And I was inspired by the show Roseanne. Roseanne and Darlene, that was her name. And she wrote a poem and it was so touching and so emotional. I remember it. And I kind of patterned my poem after that. And when my daughter got married on her rehearsal dinner night, I stood up and I added to the poem. And so, I mean, her life is, I believe, who knows going back? It could have been that everything worked out fine. And I remember saying to her, if you do this, you're not going to be able to play sports anymore. And she said, I don't care about that, Mom. You care about that. And so I was like, oh my, and I really checked in with myself and what I was getting out of making her do these things or, that maybe she didn't want to do. And she still went to the prom because she still had all her friends in the public school. She still got to do the things that she could, not totally, because she didn't, her soccer team did go to and won the state soccer tournament. So I was like, oh, dang. But, but she still was a part of the social life of, they didn't dismiss her or exclude her because she went off to be homeschooled. No. So, I look back and I think the way she's turned out, and she's now the mom of 2 and she works at a major corporation and she's, doing very well. And I think, and we talk about it and we talk about, I think she's appreciative that we did something that was a little unusual, but it was for her and what we thought the time was good. And my other daughter stayed in public school and she thrived.
Yes. So, the bottom line is we have to meet our kids where they're at. So whether that means your child is homeschooled, in public school, private school, charter school. There's another style of school I've learned about through this I had never even heard of. They're called Sudbury schools. I'm telling you, if there was one where I lived, that would be the right choice for my youngest daughter on a part-time basis. And there are a lot of different options, and you just have to appreciate your children for who they are. We have to meet our children where they are in their lives. So whether that means they are homeschooled, they go to public school, private school, charter school, something like a Sudbury type school, there are a lot of different options. And you just have to meet them where they are and connect with your kids where they are and take them down a path that's right for them. And I think that is probably not going to look the way that you thought it would when you had children, because they're born with their own personalities and their own gifts. And it's your job as a parent to help them pursue their gifts, I guess, and pursue their own passions in this world.
Yeah. And I think, I think the big problem with public schools that I learned is it's just a cookie cutter world, right? You have to fit the mold. And if it works for your child, like my older daughter, excellent. But it's not the greatest model for everyone. And
no, it's not. And, I'm not wild about the system, but I sure am wild about many of the teachers in the system.
Yes.
Because
that's great.
I know my daughter had an amazing teacher, and she had been in the public schools and she was in private schools. I actually interview people who are in the educational system on my own podcast at times because they have a wealth of knowledge and experience that they can share with homeschooling parents. And we can learn from them and apply some of those tips and tricks they have learned over the years in our own homeschooling situations.
So, my dad was an assistant principal. My dad was an assistant principal, and my mom was a guidance counselor. So they would have been good if they were able. But my dad's no longer with us, and my mom is in assisted living, so that doesn't work. So
I was
all right. So I have a question.
So I get it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just one last thought from you is, because I want to go back to why you chose to go on the path that you're on and clearly are lit up by. And, a lot of times what I found is it's the impact that we realize that we can make on the world. Right.
Yes.
So
okay. This will light me up a little more.
Yeah. So just tell me about that, and then we'll close.
So it started to help my own kids, to help my daughter write a book, and then recognizing my own problems and realizing how I can help my own children more through this. But when it really shifted, I guess, is when I realized I could make an impact in other people's lives that was so much bigger than myself. And that you can really help other people and sort of stepping into the person you were born to become. You might not have known it your whole life, but I really do feel like I am finally me, and this is why I am on this earth, is to help other people. And right now, the way I'm helping other people is through their own homeschooling journeys. And then later it could be that plus through business and podcasting, something to that effect. But it does. It really lights me up. It excites me. And I have never done something that is so outside of myself as this. Yes, this will help my family. Yes. And honestly, I see how I can help my own extended family and friends through what I'm doing. But then my podcast reaches people in over 40 countries now. I don't know who they are, but I know I'm making a difference in your life because there are people tuning in from that country every single week. I mean, all over the world. It amazes me. And even in countries where homeschooling is illegal, I mean, there are parents picking up, so whether they're homeschooling or not, they're picking up parenting tips at the very least, right? So it's mind-boggling to me. I never thought I would be reaching people in 40, or I think we've actually surpassed 50 countries now, but I'd have to look.
You might not have started. It probably would have scared you.
Oh, you want to know how many people listened to my podcast when I started? Me. I've listened to it about 5 times a week because I was so shocked that voice coming through there.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I'm really not kidding you, Lauren. Yeah. I had no audience when I started. None, because I didn't know I didn't know what an audience was. They're people who listen to you and who like what you're messaging, right? They like what you're saying. So they keep listening and they keep coming back for more.
Yeah.
I'm really not kidding you. When my podcast started in 2019, I was lucky if I had 3 listens a week. That weren't me.
So you started in 2019. So it's been
the podcast.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Business in 2018, January. But so over the last 3 years. And now I'm like, every week it's just more and more and more people. I can't believe it. And you know how this feels. You see it. Watching your stats is it's not like I don't get self-worth out of that or something, because I hear people say that, but it's awe. It's inspiring.
It's fun. It makes you want to have better content for them. You want to know more what they want, and so you can deliver that. But anyways,
I want to meet you.
Yeah, Jackie, it's been an amazing conversation. I think you're delightful. You are just the cutest thing. I love your dimples. She is like so enthusiastic. You can tell that you're lit up on life. And I think that is contagious. I mean, it's the people that listen to this are going to feel it. So thank you so much. And we'll be in touch. I hope we meet in person at a podcasting event. It'll be fun.
Thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate this.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own Not Your Average life.